was fantastic. Well, I am delighted. Carrie and I, yes, go way back. I still have his beer can chicken recipe cookbook sitting in the kitchen. And every once in a while, I actually go in it for some good Southern cooking. And it's fun, more for the spices, Carrie, than anything else. And I appreciate that you wrote that book. So that's been kind of fun. And I kind of smile about it. So that's good. Well, now, can you see my screen? Have I shared properly?
Yes, you have.
That is wonderful. This presentation came from a lot of reading that I do. I've been fortunate, 20 years with IBM and then 10 years. Bill, I didn't teach at Virginia Tech, but I was a chair and a dean at Trident Technical College, one of the 16 technical schools in South Carolina. And I was in charge of the quality curriculum there. And so out of IBM and then from some of the academic work that I did, I get some pretty good weekly news subscriptions. IBM sends me their research papers for free because they send me a tiny retirement check. And then McKinsey reports and a number of others send me information on where is technology going, what's going on with quality and industry 4.0, what's going on with AI. And the Harrisburg section of ASQ flew me up actually just last week, up to speak at their last session for the year. And it was their recognition event. So they brought me up to keynote that particular meeting. And they asked me, where should the quality department be 5 years from now? And because they asked me, it's really speculative thoughts. It's more gospel according to grace than anything on this. Although I have certainly done some reading. And if you're interested in me sending you some of the papers or links from where I pull this information, I'm happy to send it to you. I have put attribution on some of the slides. So if Carrie wants to put these slides on the website, then you can download them and seek as you wish. But I want to share, and that's why this little owl has his head turned of say what? Where are we going to go with this thing? So I'm happy to share this with you. And yes, I have loved New Orleans for a good long time. When I think about where the department is going to go, is the quality department really even going to exist in 5 years? Or will we have integrated back into the organizations from which we came? And by the way, since I'm sharing, I can't really see if there's a chat feature or a question. So by all means, just interrupt me if I say something really disruptive and you don't want me to go on until we resolve it. Now, we have to consider technology and where that's going in the future. Although I have a new client who has already told me that they are about 95% behind just about every other industry on using new technologies. They make furnace filters, highly manual, but we'll see about that. So they've asked me, because they saw this presentation, if I would be able to kind of make it simpler for their quality managers, but I'm not sure how much that's going to be possible, because in 5 years, we aren't going to be able to do anything without using our smartphones, or without using laser measurements, or just understanding a whole new organization within the company. So if we think about this, I have some questions right away. Should there even be a separate quality department? How would that department function or be measured? What are the competencies that are going to be required for members of that quality department? Like Carrie, I now do individual service contracts, business services. I'm not a W-2 employee anymore. I just do 1099 work with clients as they call and ask me to do work. And another one is saying, what competencies do my quality assurance personnel need, and how do we get there? So what kind of skills are we going to need? And then how do I balance that human interaction with the automated monitoring and reporting systems? And there's a lot of different thought on that one, depending on how much you focus on the technology and what the technology can do versus the impact it has on human interaction. And that's really where this next slide comes from. Now, a friend of mine built this slide and put it into a paper that he wrote, back in 1999 or something. It was published in the Quality Management Division Forum. Absolutely phenomenal paper. Actually, that's not true. That was published in Quality Progress. I finally got him to write an updated version 20 years later, and it was published in the Quality Management Division Forum. But Tom Pearson, who was a past chair of the metrology division, really sees the business, and I love this Venn diagram. It's how you learn what Venn diagrams are for. There's really three parts to an organization. There's the business itself. There's the mission, the vision, the values. There's what we want to do and what products or services we want to provide to our services, to our customers. And then the technology and the processes and the tools are how we get there. And the human element is so critical for getting us to the results and for that forward motion and the personality and the culture of the organization. The quality department isn't any different than the rest of the organization. So we in the quality department need to mirror those same processes, those same core processes that the whole organization does. Quality 4.0 isn't really about technology. It's about how we as humans integrate the technology into our business systems. And if you can see my notes here, I've got a presentation view and I've got a couple of little handwritten notes on these things. I'll send this slide deck to Carrie, and then you can pull the notes off of it if you're not seeing them now. Now, there are 5 little bits of wisdom that I picked up on a IBM Institute for Business Value research brief that I got back in April that I really, really liked. And it doesn't have to do so much with technology 4.0, but more where that technology is going to affect the culture of the organization and how you and I are going to work with each other and how we as quality professionals are going to work with our stakeholders. Because remember, there's really 5 different kinds of general stakeholders in the organization. There's the organization itself, there's us as the employees, there's the customers, there's suppliers, and there's also our community. It's our reputation within that community. And depending on your perspective, it's either New Orleans or thank you, Albert, for joining us from Texas, or Ed joining us from Spokane, or California, wherever you are now. But it could be globally, because now if we're looking at a global world with our value chains that are now globally into supplying, this is going to happen for all of us. We need to make sure that we can scale our services to support the users, but we also need to understand that those users have different levels of sophistication. We're going to have to sustain. Now, sustain for me used to mean the maintainability of the organization. Now, more and more with the environmental views, sustainability is how are we going to maintain the health of our globe, of the environment itself. So I always have a dichotomy in my head when I say the word sustain. To me, it's continuing to a viable organization and a viable business. To a lot of other people, it's helping Mother Earth to survive. Well, both of those are going to happen. And then we need to empower the workforce of the future. I am not a Generation Z. I have been around. William, you got out of high school in 1971? I got out of high school in 1967. So do the math on that one. You can tell that I'm not a Gen Z kind of person. But more and more, these young individuals are coming in being told that they can do anything. And by the way, they should be able to do it very quickly. And so for those of us who have worked with employees for years, and we have succession plans, and we have mentored employees into positions that we know are going to open up in a year or 2 or 3, then we get a new employee in, and they see that they have the skills that would help them do a job that are 3 pay scales higher than they are now. But somebody else is in there and he or she is doing a really good job. Well, the expectation from this young person is, Well, I should be able to do that job, so get rid of them and put me in it. Well, excuse me, what am I going to do with this other person who's really doing a great job? So we're really going to have to look as quality department people, how we interface with each other, how we look at our own careers. Do we want to go back into line management? Do we want to go back into line work? Do we want to stay in that staff supporting role? What do we want to do? And then this cybersecurity is becoming more and more an issue as we use more technology, as we go more into the cloud, as we go more into this whole data analysis piece. There's not just the security piece to it, but there's also the personal security. There is respect for personal information, and that's only going to become more so. So we're going to have to get into this item 5, develop ethical data and technology practices. And everybody doesn't view those ethics the same way. I'm not too worried that somebody knows how old I am. Somebody else might really be very upset if you release data that shows their birth date or shows how old they are. And we really have to be cognizant of the human beings who are impacted by our use of data. So if we look back at this Venn diagram, and I'll just go quickly through each of these 3 major cycles, and you can see the overlap between businesses, technology, or the new tools. And that's a lot of what you and I do is we help other people with tools. We learn tools. Tools help us get the work done. Before the presentation started, you may have heard Stacy and I and Carrie talking about how do you get to results? Concepts and techniques are great, but we got to get to the results. We've got to be able to use those core processes to meet the vision and values of the organization, to meet our customer requirements. And we have to have an infrastructure and the resources that are going to enable us to get to that middle area called success. And that takes the human element. So let me start with business. We've got to have that infrastructure, that organizational structure and its effect on performance. We can organize ourselves in a bunch of different ways. Quality can report to finance, it can report to operations, it can report directly to the CEO, it can report to any number of other areas of the organization. However, it's up to us how we create relationships, because we are part of that great big interrelationship diagram that is the communication cycle of an organization and in a global environment of that whole value chain. So as we get more digitally involved, that transformation, we're becoming more network based. And the last 2 years, we spent so much virtually, and many of you are not right in New Orleans anyway. Carrie's out in Washington, and he's just using a hot area on his phone to be able to lead this meeting. So we're going to have to get more and more used to this kind of thing. And the last 2 years have really helped us a lot with that. And then we get into the networked environment. Quality is becoming more network based. But the other piece is, in this network environment, there are a lot of new leadership tasks, new techniques that are going to help us in virtual teams. And you and I, as quality professionals, have been studying the benefits of virtual teams for a long time. That's part of Quality 101. I write the review guide for the Certified Quality Improvement Associate. I and now Dr. Ferderer out of University of Ohio, I guess Ohio State, who is now going to take over the next edition, the 5th edition, because I think that the 4th edition was probably my last one. We are having to look at how we're going to manage in virtual teams. And the other positive thing about that, and Carrie, thank you for being the stand-in chair for the NOLA section, because we have the skills of building a virtual team. We want to use those skills for our ASQ sections as well as we do for our day jobs in what we do. And we're going to have to take more accountability and responsibility for decisions and results. So what does this mean for you and me? How's it going to impact us? We ourselves have to accept more empowerment. We need to empower ourselves to communicate more effectively, not to be shy about creating new relationships within the organization, need to understand when we have a manager who really expects you to go to your manager and that manager talk to their manager and go through the hierarchy, or whether you can set up a relationship where you can just send them a text and talk to them directly. And again, that's a scalable issue. In a smaller company, it's just not an issue at all. You see each other, you say something. In a larger organization, you get more into these working styles. So we need to step up and really feel and know that we are equal in skill and in ability and in accountability with anybody in that organization. The quality manager must be respected and trusted beyond the organization, beyond operations, be seen as a peer to any of the management within the organization. We are a resource. We have tremendous knowledge and skill that we've been using for a long time. Yes, we in quality need more digital skills. Bill, you are going to be a big help. I've taught statistics once, and then I hired somebody from AT&T Long Lines to teach statistics for me when I was at the college. I've been in Mensa since I was 17, but I am not excited about statistics. I can do it, but boy, I'm sure glad that people like you exist in this world. So that works. And I build relationships and long-term partnerships because I don't have all the skills, and we don't need to have all the skills. We need to understand the umbrella of the whole organization. We need to become that Gandalf and Dumbledore who sees where the organization is going, who is plugged into the executive corner, know what's going on. We need to be friends with the executive assistants. We need to make sure that we are in that rumor chain or in that strategic planning chain in some way or other, so we know what's coming down the road. And it's behavioral skills that we're going to need even more than the quality tools. The quality tools are pretty easy to remember and learn. We go to Nancy Teague or to my little quality improvement pocket guide, and you can read how to use the tools. But relating with other people is going to become more and more important as we work faster and faster. Then if we go into the technology side, we have to align ourselves. Now, there's an interesting article I read on the future of jobs that came out back in 2020 from the World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum is a heavily skewed toward climate change, toward the world's going to end in 2025. So I wouldn't panic too much, depending on whether you also believe the world's going to end in 2025. You can probably tell from my comments that I don't. But I really liked what this report said. There's going to be another net 12 million new job roles will be created. Well, realize that that doesn't mean that the old job roles are all going to still be there. We all are using this example of people just don't make a whole lot of buggy whips anymore. People are not going to be making rotary telephones for a long time unless you have this tiny little niche market and you can make enough money on it. All of us are going to have to watch our skills and migrate them and take responsibility for ourselves to be able to do so. We're going to need to learn more of the digitization of some of the machines that we are going to be auditing around. There are things that we're going to have to stay really up to date on. We're going to have to be aware of some of the new interactions and expectations of humans and machines. We are going to have to help others also to feel comfortable in coming up with those new skills. As we facilitate teams, we are going to need to figure out what skills do these new team members need and help their managers to find those skills, to find training or just in time or virtual learning, whatever it is. ASQ is right there trying to help us with that. And even for those of us who can stay in our existing roles, what's going to happen is that those roles are going to change as well. We're going to have 40% more core skills are going to change just for you and me. And they're already doing that for me. I'm already having to learn an awful lot of software apps. I'm having to learn a lot more of the applications that my clients use for me to be able to support them in their environments. So if we look at these new tools, we're seeing here, and I didn't even bother to go through the notes on this one, but here's just some points that I talk through. So now let's take a look at the quality department and the opportunities for you and me. We are getting pushed more and more in even our home computers to get onto the cloud. My husband's absolutely paranoid. He does not want to use the cloud. Our financial records are going to stay in the disk drive within these four walls. Nobody else is getting them. But it is harder and harder to find applications that allow us to be able to do that. There's some of the new financial applications don't even recognize a local disk. They're going to force you right out onto the cloud. That's going to happen more and more. So we're going to have to understand more about how the cloud works, how we share that data, how we secure that data, how we isolate our data versus other people's data on some Google Drive somewhere. 69% of the corporations that IBM surveyed are planning to accelerate their cloud adoption. So all of us are going to have to be really comfortable with that. And frankly, that's a little bit new for me too. Then we're going to look at optimizing our processes. All of us know value stream mapping. We all know that we're working with supply chains all the time. And you know that those processes have changed a lot in the last 2 years. They've been tremendously disrupted. Many of them are having to be completely redesigned, and the workflows are getting automated so much more now, just simply because there aren't enough people anymore to get the stuff done. And those people who have stayed, some of them don't want to learn the automation applications. And so they are staying in their jobs. And if they're in a union, they are there and their jobs are being contracted more and more because the jobs have moved somewhere else. It's become very, very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to try and balance these jobs now. And so in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a lot of change in what the core business provides, what the value is that we provide to to our customers. And we're really going to have to redesign ourselves to meet where those customers are going and how we can meet their needs using the technology we've got. So if we look, and here's just one little simple sentence that came out, or statement really, that came out of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And this is where the human factor comes in. This is where my ears perked up when I read this thing. Appropriate guardrails that government and industry can set that recognize opportunities as well as risks, including the harm that could come from setting a standard that is tougher than what we set for human beings. Think about that. I do have a client, food processor. They have conveyor belts for making their meatballs, whatever they are. The conveyor belt, if it is not designed properly, and if we don't have the process set properly, will move the meatballs so fast that they start overflowing the catch basin at the end. Consider how expensive it is to go sweeping up the meatballs off the floor faster than the human beings can get to the button that turns the conveyor belt off. It's one thing to say we're going to speed up production. It's another thing to realize that there are human beings there who are part of that process. And it can only get worse if we're not careful. We need to be cautious about that automation and realize that human beings are critical. The machines cannot do it on their own. We would like to think there's a perpetual motion machine. We'd like to think we've designed everything perfectly, but all of us have met Murphy. We know Murphy's law exists. We need to recognize the respect for human beings. One of the errors that we made in IBM before I left, probably in about the middle 1980s, the computers had gotten so much easier to maintain that it occurred to us and our finance department that we are paying our engineers, our customer engineers, an awful lot to have a lessened skill set. And at some point, some finance person said, we're paying these guys too much, or these ladies too much, for the set of skills they are now using to maintain these machines. Well, that word got out really fast. even though the plan was through attrition, we weren't cutting anybody's salary, but no, raises weren't going to be as big as they were. And over a number of set years, the salary range was going to reset itself as new people got into the jobs. Well, that's not how it was perceived. And so people started doing biological rest stations inside the gates of the computers. They were doing all kinds of things just out of anger and frustration without really understanding the full situation. We did not realize the impact of what we were doing on the human beings. Not a good idea. And of course, in even a situation like that, the quality department's going to be in the middle of this. You and I are going to be there trying to balance these changes and helping the people who are on our teams to understand where we're going. We're going to need to be more transparent. We're going to need to be more explaining of what we do. So if we go back to this Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and you can see the link here on the bottom of the screen, we also need to be aware that we are not just one country anymore. We're not just the United States. Certainly up in Washington, you're working with Vancouver all the time. In New Orleans, you're working with the Caribbean all the time. There are country and other international standards. And I don't know, Carrie, whether you're working, well, yeah, you're working on some of the ISO standards that are global. I'm on Technical Committee 304 for quality management in healthcare. And we're writing stuff that has to be okayed globally. We're looking at standards coming in from South Korea. So what is it going to mean for you and me as a quality professional? Well, Quality 4.0, and actually ASQ is trying to get away from the term Quality 4.0 because it's really simply an integration into Industry 4.0. It's how we are going to facilitate and reduce disruption in a new environment, how we are going to help the organization improve with newest digital assumptions in the technologies of what we're trying to do. We are going to have to further these oversight and governance mechanisms. And you heard Carrie setting up procedures and policies and standards for the cannabis industry, which is global. And certainly it's interesting. It's almost like some of the risk management issues coming out of COVID. Different countries are viewing it in different ways. Different countries view the use of cannabis differently than other countries view the delivery of healthcare. We're going to have to be aware globally of how all these changes are going to affect us and our suppliers and our customers. We are going to have to become more and more interdisciplinary. Now, that's not a big deal for you and I, because one of the first terms we ever learn in quality is cross-functional. So just, more so, that's really all that's going to be. We are going to need more responsible engineering practices because there are going to be a bunch more of them. We're going to have more automation, more automation, and we're going to have more test systems. But with that comes the privacy and fairness. Who are going to be the guinea pigs for these test systems? Who's going to work with them? What's the third-party testing? What are the risks involved in those? And then there may be stronger barriers. There may be smaller fences around how data can be used. All of us as ASQ member leaders now have to take the general data privacy certification because of the European Union, because ASQ does business in Europe, and we need to all show that we have finished that particular training to be sensitive to the European Union's fencing of data and privacy issues. That's only going to get more so. So then let's look at this final human. And you can tell that I've been talking about the human element all the time. I am, after all, a degreed anthropologist. I would like to think that the humans are the ones who are really going to drive this, that we aren't into Terminator 1, 2, and 3, where the machines have taken over the world. I don't really believe that's going to happen. I could be fatally wrong, but we'll see. But what about us? We care and we pay attention to the quality of our company. We want to provide the excellence to our customers that they deserve. We want to be aware and caring to our stakeholders. There was a really good keynote that was given. Luciana Paulis, as a matter of fact, her she has a webinar that's a free member benefit, or at least it's on ASQ, um, the app, the ASQ app, that we get. You get the download app. I think every day they send out an ASQ list of features and webinars or links or whatever it is. And she's got a really good WebEx right now. She wrote a book that was highlighted in World Conference out in Anaheim. And she did a quality management division webinar on building trust. And she listed 4 major characteristics of trust that I really agree with. And these are not new. If you've read The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey, who is Stephen Covey's son, who ran the Covey organization for many years, this will look familiar. We have to be connected with each other. We must come out of our silos. That has to continue. I know that's not new, but continue doing it. We have to pay attention to each other. We don't just look in the mirror anymore. We need to come out of our cubicles. We need to come out of our quality assurance office and walk that Gemba. We need to be out and setting up relationships. We need to increase the respect that we hold, and we have to earn that respect. I don't mean to be rude to insinuate that you haven't already done so, but it'll become even more important. And we need to empower others to understand quality. There's no chance in the world that we dare feel that we have to keep our skills to ourselves. We really want to share, because when you share those skills, then we all become stronger. And it isn't a matter of position power anymore. It's relationship power is where we really want to go. So I'd suggest going back into your free member benefit in June, or it might have been even May, but you can get on to asq.org and just Google or search on Luciana Paulice, and you'll probably see that WebEx come up. It's probably also on QMD's YouTube channel, and you can just get that easily by going into YouTube and searching on either QMD or Luciana Paulice. I think that's how I listened to it the second time. All right, let me wrap this thing up because it's 8:26 now. We need to make cultural change a priority. I'm beginning to write another book now on the building blocks of culture, and we're incorporating some of the Eastern mindfulness concepts, how we work with each other. We need to look at cultural change because technology is going to disrupt us so badly that it will continue to exacerbate any cultural dissonance that there is within the organization. I mentioned earlier that the newer generations do expect a different workplace. They expect different recognition of who and what they are. We're having to rethink rules and practices to reduce barriers. We need to all go back and reread Elihu Goldratt's The Goal. It's more true than it ever used to be. AI and automation are going to release you and I to be able to look broader. We can look more strategically at the organization. It's going to be easier for us to gather data. It's going to be easy. Heaven forbid any of you have ever used QI macros rather than Minitab or rather than SAS or whatever it is. It is so easy because all the execs are written there. So it allows me to spend more time with the executives. I'm not crunching numbers to go create a control chart. I'm up there. I can do a fast pivot table, get that thing done with somebody's exec and get it out to an executive or a quality manager. And we can talk about something and move forward very, very quickly. And so the preventive action is even more important now because things move so quickly that if you wait for corrective action, you've lost an awful lot of product or wasted an awful lot of your service time. And that is the cost of poor quality, and it's so expensive. And then we want to continue our internal operations and supply chain cost reduction. We need to do that and use our own talents. All right, let me wrap this one up here. I think I'm getting told that I need to shut up. Finally, let's look at the human element of core processes. I already talked about it. Be transparent. Explain what we're doing, interact with the AI systems, but make sure that others understand why we're doing AI, why we are supposedly taking jobs away from people. Help them understand that jobs aren't going away, they're just moving, and we need to anticipate where those jobs are going to move and help people to get there. So you and I may be more valuable in line functions. Think about that. Think whether you want to go back into line production. Think about whether you want to move over into a supervisory or a management or a middle management position. You certainly have the skills and competencies and experience. We are better at enabling job to job transitions because we understand process. We understand communication and teamwork, and we can help reskill and upskill others as well. And so finally, Meredith Somers did a really good, or wrote a good paper for 1922. It was relatively new. It came out of the MIT Sloan School of Management. I think the Harvard Business Review may have highlighted it, or it could have been McKinsey Reports. But she really looks at this triangle. The base is that you and I need to make sense of what we see around us, and we need to relate intimately with our colleagues and with the environment in which we function. We need to use some of our visioning and our innovation talents and skills to help the organization as a whole, more than our tiny quality assurance or quality management environment, because all of us need to be inventing new ways to get to the organization. So my thought is, what do you think and where do you go? I'm going to stop sharing. I will, I stop sharing. And Carrie, I'm going to leave it back to you and see what you think. And anybody, this is my cell phone and this is my email address. Happy to speak with you.
Well, that was a great talk, Grace. Thank you. Very well considered and very visionary. And I applaud the way you put that together. I was thinking this should be presented to
absolutely
many organizations, and I'm definitely going to reread this thing and kind of think about it. It comes to mind if I'm thinking about the ASTM meeting we just came with D37, which is, there's a few of us graybeards running around there, like maybe 3. And then a population of very energetic, anxious youngsters that are very brilliant and doing their job. And this really kind of brought together some thoughts from observations. And I'm sure Ed and I will be sharing our takeaways now. But all that being said, I'd like to open the floor up for questions for Grace. And before I do that, I saw Ron Schulenkamp joined us, and I hope you guys managed to catch a good section of this. And thank you for showing up.
Yeah, I've been listening.
Ron, did you hear me taking your name in vain before the presentation started? I'm embarrassed.
No, I was a little late. I was at work.
I was bemoaning your situation, and it's good that I couldn't remember the name of your hospital. So you're safe. You're safe.
Well, let's put it this way, and you guys can all appreciate this. Medicare, Medicaid ranks hospitals throughout the United States on a 5-star system, 1-star, 2-star. The Mayo clinics and Cleveland clinics, they're the 5 stars, right? Well, we're 1-star, which means we're in the bottom 200 in the country.
Jeez, man.
Out of 6,000 hospitals. So
lots of opportunities.
That is an understatement. So first off, you got to get people, believe it or not, I do training of residents, and I show them the top 10% of hospitals, how they have no infections at all. And the residents never heard of that. These are second-year doctors. And they said, you mean there's no catheter infections, no central line? I said, not one. Because, CMS measures, that's how they make the top 10%. And it's like, I said, how do you go through medical school and not learn this?
Where they went to medical school, Ron.
Yeah, well, they're not taught about the reality of how things really work, right? They know the medicine part and they see the patient, one patient at a time, but they never step back and look at the big picture.
Yep.
Well,
Just amazing.
thanks for sharing that, Ron, and thanks for chiming in with us. It's good seeing your name on the board here. Does
Yeah,
anyone else have questions for Grace, or want to share some conversation?
You know what Ron just said about they know the medicine, but they don't know a lot of stuff. We have the same thing with engineers at the shipyard. I'm not a degreed engineer. I'm not qualified to be one, but you'd be shocked at what they don't know in process capability. What can be achieved? And you could put anything on a drawing. It doesn't make it possible with the technology that you have. And they just don't know that. It's like these goofy stairways and ramps and stuff that you see in these drawings, and you scratch in your head. You go, how is that possible? You know, yeah, you can draw it, but doesn't mean you can make it. Doesn't make it make sense. But Grace, excellent job as always. I
Thanks,
was
Mike.
particularly struggled about the global
Yes.
stuff. Saturday morning, I'm headed to England.
Dear man.
And it's I've brought people from the shipyard, very knowledgeable, not ignorant by any means, younger than me, much younger than me in a lot of cases. Part of our accuracy control group, and they just cannot learn anything but feet and inches. It's impossible for them, and I don't get that. They, when you point out that the rest of the whole cotton picking world is metric.
Yep.
I don't care. I don't like soccer and I don't like metric. And okay, well.
And they just refuse.
They refuse, and they can't even count change. Well, there's 100 pence to a pound. Not difficult, but there's no quarter. There's a 20 pence. So all right, you use 5 of them for a pound.
Yeah,
So
bingo.
what's the big deal? But cannot change your thinking around. And like I say, I'm a geezer, but people a lot younger that just will not go global.
We made a huge mistake in the 80s by not going metric. We really did.
We ought to do it tomorrow.
Yeah, it would have been hard, but we would have done it. Jeez. Yeah, Mike, I wish you well.
Thanks.
That's wild. Yeah, I'll be in London in August, and that'll be fun. Yeah, I'm okay with 20 pieces. I'm fine.
Sheffield. It's Sheffield and Stoke-on-Trent. It's near Birmingham. But
oh, okay.
I guess you're not afraid of Skynet, but I kind of am. That's where I get some trepidation with Schwarzenegger's Skynet.
Oh yes. No, I didn't like Terminator. That one was kind of rough. So yes, it may still be there, but I was reading Isaac Asimov before, you and I, yeah. I'm more an Asimov person, but that's okay. So, All right, iRobot, here we go. Anything else? What else have I talked everybody into submission?
So Grace, I just have a question. Kind of, it's following up what Mike just said about engineers. What has ASQ noticed in the world over the past 10 to 20 years? For example, when I started off as an engineer, they took engineers out of school and they put them on a rig, and you had to rebuild every pump, every motor. You had to do everything before you ever got to the office to do engineering. So that was like a 5-year program. Then that was with a company called Gulf Oil. Then Chevron bought out Gulf, and they did no training at all. They said, well, you have an engineering degree, you can figure it out. And that was the first at the beginning of shifting the burden of training and development from the company doing it so that people were trained properly with the systems of the company. As you know, every company has different systems. The engineering may be the same, but how the company operates is totally different. But it seemed to progress to now, there is no internal training on anything. You got to come to the job with a a green belt or black belt or project management certification, or so it's all been shifted onto the individual person. And I see this at the hospital where people have a PMP, but they have no idea how to do a project, because hospitals are totally different than a software upgrade.
That's what made me join ASQ and stick my nose in these books and get these 3 certifications, because I saw that Avondale. I was at Avondale, and I saw pretty quickly that I was never going to get trained at Avondale. They hired me as a quality engineer, and now I'm at Ingalls in Mississippi. And if you come out of Southern Miss with any kind of engineering degree, they've hired they have drive-through hiring events. They will come to your car. You don't even have to get out of your car, and they'll hire you. That's how badly they need engineers. So experience, no. They get these young people, and the smart ones will listen to somebody like me. And I'm not trying to be an engineer, but if you can tell that they just have never. I'll say, come on, let's take a walk. Let's crawl in this hole. Let's crawl in this. You afraid of heights? Good. Come on, let's go. And nobody's ever. Some of them have not even been aboard a ship, and they're working as an engineer in the shipyard. But what you said about Gulf is, I wish things were still done that way.
They do in hospitals too. We have somebody in a committee with the healthcare division, and she is a physician manager, chief medical officer at a hospital in Saudi Arabia. And she's asked us to look at a project on how we can help physicians coming out of medical school to even know how to operate on a living patient and how to work with a team of nurses in the operating room. They don't even know how to work with each other. They don't understand the handoffs. They don't understand what they know what tool to use, but they don't know how to ask for it and put their hand out and get it from another human being.
Wow.
And it does frighten me. The companies seem to think, or they have delegated the ability to do, and Stacy and I were talking about that at the beginning of the session, the idea of the do portion. They think the academic environment is creating it, but they're not. The technical schools are trying. That's why vocational schools are coming back. But for the longest time, we got so conceptual. We think academically that if you read a book, you can get it done. Well, we know that's not true. All of us have tried it, and we had to do exactly what Mike did. We had to get our hands dirty and go back and really figure out how to do it. That's amazing.
It is very interesting discussion.
Well, good. Anything else I can help people with?
Well, I'd like to jump in a little bit. I enjoyed your presentation. I'm interested in the statistical side, and not too much on the management side. I've always been in academia.
Sorry, Bill. Sorry.
Hey, academic life is a very good life. So,
I
just thought I would jump in really quickly and say, in the statistics area, though, I think a lot of companies are finding that it's a lot easier to collect data than it is to know what to do with it.
Oh, God, yes.
And many companies are overwhelmed by the amount of data. So I see more machine learning type techniques. The current traditional techniques don't always work so well. And also I see companies with black box analysis, software companies coming into companies and sort of just implementing their black box methods. And really there's no real interpretation or understanding of what's going on in some cases in that black box. I mean,
you're right.
So anyway, statistics is getting more complicated. There's no question about that.
And that scares the stuff out of me, Bill.
Well, it scares me, and I've been in statistics for 40 some odd years. I mean, it's it's moving very quickly. There's no doubt about that.
I love it.
But
Well, and you get
I'm
into
interested in the healthcare side too.
good.
We did some work with the hospitals, but I had a couple of questions for you. One is, did you say that ASQ doesn't like the quality 4.0 terminology, or they do like it?
Liked it a lot to begin with, and realized that we had talked ourselves into a corner of differentiating the quality portion of Industry 4.0 and Technology 4.0. And then people were thinking that it was a separate discipline rather than a characteristic that was going to leverage or assist the success of Technology and Industry 4.0. That it really didn't do any good to call it Quality 4.0 because it was siloed too much. I haven't been part of those conversations. I've only really heard, because I'm on the board, that they were trying to get away from that term.
Okay, that's interesting. So the idea is to integrate the quality,
Yes.
the quality into Industry 4.0. So
Yes.
I'm interested in Industry 4.0, but I'm really more of an Industry 3.0 person myself. But I understand some of the issues there. Anyway, I just wanted to say I enjoyed your presentation, and I hope to meet all of you in person one of these days.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Any more thoughts, comments? All righty then. Well, a big warm thank you, Grace. Always appreciate your insight and your perspective. And with that, I guess I'm going to basically want to indicate that our meeting next month, I think we decided was going to be kind of a new member meeting where we're going to really push to get all our new members in and maybe come up with some special discussions with them and for them, and talk about mentorship and that kind of thing. So it'll be a kind of a different spin next month. Sorry. So with that, does anyone have anything else they'd like to comment on?
Want to thank you, Carrie, for running a good meeting, and Grace, your presentation is excellent as usual, and you touch on subjects that have been lacking ever since I got into the quality in the late 80s.
Well, and thanks, Ed. It's good to hear from you again. Wish we were selling more of our products so that you'd be getting some money, but okay, so much is it, but we'll keep working on it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have an absolutely wonderful weekend. And for those of you, happy Father's Day.
Thanks, Grace.
All right.
Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Grace.
Love you all. Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Carrie.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
All right.